Let's talk about one of humanity's oldest, most destructive habits, war. But we're going to look at it through a really old lens, like 2,400 years old. We're asking a simple question. What is the real cause of war? Well, if you ask the ancient philosopher Plato, he'd tell you the answer has absolutely nothing to do with armies or borders. It has everything to do with what's going on inside our own heads. So let's just start with that one big idea. What if everything we think we know about war is backward? What if the first shot isn't fired from a gun at all, but from a single thought? It doesn't start with the bombs falling from the sky. It's not really about the lines we draw on a map. And when you get down to the deepest root of it all, it's not even about politics. It's actually something way more fundamental and honestly a lot more dangerous. I mean, can you imagine if Plato was around today just watching the news? He wouldn't point his finger at presidents or prime ministers first. Nope. He'd look right at all of us and say something really uncomfortable. You are all prisoners of your own minds. What he's saying is that the real battlefield isn't out there, it's in here. Okay, so how does this whole internal battlefield thing work? Well, to get it, we need to step inside Plato's most famous idea, the allegory of the cave. This is where we find the real philosophical source of all conflict. So Plato's allegory of the cave, it's actually pretty simple, but wow, is it profound. Picture this. A group of people have been chained up in a cave their whole lives, forced to stare at a blank wall. Behind them, there's a fire, and people walk past the fire, casting shadows on the wall in front of the prisoners. For them, those shadows, that's it. That's reality. They have no clue they're living in this mental cave, completely mistaking flickering images for the absolute truth. And this is exactly where conflict starts. It's a simple three-step process that we all kind of do. First, just like those prisoners, we all live in our own little mental caves, right? They're shaped by our culture, our families, the media we watch. Second, on the walls of that cave, we see shadows. These are our beliefs, our national pride, our sense of us. And then comes the really dangerous part. We become 100% convinced that our shadows are the only real thing. Now, in our world, these shadows take on some really powerful forms. As you can see here, our nationality, that can become our absolute identity. Our religion becomes the one and only truth. Our political party, well, that becomes a source of moral superiority. These are the modern shadows we are literally willing to fight and die for, totally convinced they are the whole picture. And just like that, boom, conflict is born. You have to wonder, if Plato had a Twitter account today, he'd probably post something just like this, wouldn't he? A little bit of ancient snark to put it all in perspective. It's kind of funny, but it also kind of hurts, because it's so true. And this isn't just some old philosophy. Here's what's so wild. Modern science is basically proving that Plato's cave isn't just a metaphor. It's a pretty good description of how our brains are literally wired. This is where we get into the biology of bias. Okay, here's the key thing to get. Your brain did not evolve to find some kind of objective truth. It evolved for one main reason, to keep you alive. You've got this little part of your brain called the amygdala. It's like your brain's alarm system, and it's always scanning for threats. To make super fast decisions, it has to simplify the world. And it does that by sorting everything into the most basic categories possible. Us versus them. And this is that shortcut in action. Us feels safe. It feels familiar. It feels right. Them, on the other hand, feels like danger, a threat, and automatically wrong. It's this super primitive survival tool that, once you add politics and media and history into the mix, becomes this incredibly powerful engine for division. We end up emotionally invested in a story, not in the actual facts. So, if our minds are kind of trapped in this platonic cave, and our brains are hardwired for this us versus them thinking, it's really no surprise that wars aren't just random. They actually follow a pretty predictable, hidden pattern. A tragic loop that keeps repeating itself because the shadows on our walls tell us it has to. Let's just walk through this tragic spiral, and you'll see exactly how it escalates. It all starts when our identity gets rigid. We are this and they are that. No nuance. Then, fear gets amplified, used as a weapon by leaders and media to make that divide even deeper. Pretty soon, real conversation just stops. We're not listening to understand anymore. We're just waiting for our turn to argue. And that's when the really ugly stuff starts, dehumanization. We stop seeing the other side as people and start seeing them as labels or obstacles. And finally, we get to the tragic end of this road. Violence doesn't just become an option, it becomes a justified solution. And this is where Plato's wisdom just hits you like a ton of bricks. He would say the war you see on TV is just a symptom. The real fight, the one that really sealed the deal, was already lost internally, inside the minds of a society that just forgot how to question itself. So, we've gone deep on the problem, and we've seen how it's all rooted inside our own minds. So, how do we fix it? Let's flip the script and check out the philosophical blueprint for peace, designed by some of the greatest thinkers in history who saw this exact problem ages ago. So here we have 3 really powerful alternatives to conflict. First up, Plato's own idea, philosopher kings. He thought leaders shouldn't be power-hungry politicians, but wise thinkers who are trained in truth and self-awareness. Why? Because most wars are started by wounded egos, not by wisdom. Then you have the Buddhist perspective, which goes even deeper to the root of it all, the ego. The philosophy is beautiful and simple. When you cling to the idea of I, you automatically create an enemy. Let go of the ego, and the enemy just disappears. And finally, the Stoics give us a really practical approach. You can't control other countries, but you can control your own response. I mean, imagine leaders who actually practiced emotional discipline. War would be starved of its fuel. Okay, this is all really fascinating stuff, but how do we make it useful for us, right here, right now? Because global peace isn't just for philosophers and politicians. It starts with individual clarity. It starts with you. So what can we actually do? Well, here are 5 practical steps that are like an antidote to that loop of war. Number 1, start by asking the most powerful question imaginable, the one that shatters rigid thinking. What if I'm wrong? 2, actively fight dehumanization. Make an effort to see the other side as human beings. Remember, every so-called enemy has a family, a story, and fears, just like you. 3, short-circuit that cycle of fear by dialing down your own emotional reactivity. Before you hit share on that angry post, just pause, breathe. 4, stop our dialogue from breaking down by actively looking for truth, not just stuff that confirms what you already believe. You have to step outside your echo chamber. And finally, number 5, the foundation for everything. Build your own inner peace first. It's simple. A peaceful mind doesn't create conflict. And all of this brings us to the single biggest realization of this whole explainer. If you only take away one thing, please let it be this. Here it is, the ultimate truth. War isn't just some external thing that happens to us. It's an internal event that gets projected onto the world. It's happening inside human minds, inside our minds, every single day. And that's the real bottom line. Until we learn how to win the war inside ourselves, the war against our own biases, our egos, our fears, the external wars are just going to keep repeating. It's a tragic, predictable loop. Plato didn't just warn us about this 2,400 years ago. He actually gave us the blueprint to solve it. So, this leaves us with one final, pretty big question. It's not about whether governments can end war. It's about whether we, as individuals and as a species, can finally turn inward and solve the war that's raging inside our own minds. What do you think? Can we do it?